The first thing that we do is we do what's called a reconnecting set, and that's using this color and the non-focus division. And we reconnect because what we know is that the brain is really good at making stuff up. It doesn't utilize truly your non-focus division as much as you think it does. It'll make things up about what's over here on the left and what's over here on the right because it saves energy, right? I don't have to be concerned about that necessarily. So I'm just going to put all my attention here. But what happens then is that when it isn't functioning at all, when you have a brain injury that's preventing, you from actually seeing, you don't know because it's constantly making stuff up. So that's why we do that first. We check to see, is that part of the brain functioning? And we reconnect with proprioception and depth perception as well. We even reconnect the hearing in that area because as it turns out, there's even a part of the eyes that takes in sound. But sound is also another way that the nervous system takes in information. So it's a little bit complex, that part of it. But throughout the session, we're always using that left and right pattern intermittently to do what we call mapping it in.
What if healing had nothing to do with your past and everything to do with your pattern? What if the stories you carry are not locked in your mind, but looping silently through your nervous system, waiting to be collapsed? This episode is not about managing trauma. It is about neutralizing it at the source without retelling the story, without reliving the pain. Liz Larson brings the science and soul of CognoMovement to the surface, revealing how small shifts in your eyes, body, and awareness can rewire the brain, restore the body, and radically change your life. Because the truth is, transformation does not take time, it takes precision. And when you hit the pattern where it lives, change is instant. So enjoy, my friends.
And here we are again. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on which side of the globe you are sitting on at this very moment. We have another special guest for you. We have Liz Larson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you here. So the way that we always love to start our shows, we always love to ask our guest, what inspired you to do what you do today?
Well, there's a number of things. The two biggest are, one, that I was sort of born this way. I'm that person that people always ask questions to that I have no business knowing the answer. I mean, as far back as 4 years old, and I used to always think, why are these grown-ups asking me these questions? So that's kind of who I am, is a person who other people come to for help. However, what really drove me to do this work that we do today, and CognoMovement is the company that I co-created with Bill McKenna, and a modality that we both created, came out of my parents both having severe neurological disorders. The same year, they were both 72. They came down with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, literally in the same month at the exact same time. And so I am a person who does not take no for an answer. It's always about possibility with me. And so I just happened to be learning neuro-linguistic programming at that time, 7 hours away. I had to drive 7 hours every month back and forth. But the person who was teaching that training just happened to be focused in brain remapping. So at that time, I learned that the body could change the brain, and I studied every last thing I could about neurology in that 14 hours back and forth to my training every month. That's what I did. I listened to Audible and everything I could about how the body could change the brain or the brain could change the body. And within that year, I met Bill McKenna, and we both had backgrounds that matched up, and we started this work.
I absolutely love it. And unfortunately, Bill's not with us today because he's not feeling the best, but we know that Bill is with us in spirit.
Yes.
So, Liz, I'd love to learn more about what exactly is brain mapping.
So in neurolinguistic programming, brain remapping is the idea that the way your brain handles information can be shifted to another part of the brain. So in our lingo, CognoMovement, how we utilize that is we know that when you think of something like your favorite person, your favorite food, the best place you've been on the planet, your eyes will move to actually find that file. And it's the same every time. Here it is, and the eyes show you. In the States, we used to have what's called the Dewey Decimal System at the library, where you'd look through a file card catalog to find what you're looking for. That's what your eyes do for your brain. So there's an extension of that. The nervous system is actually the thing that holds the whole memory. The thought and the feeling together create the whole memory. So in our work, what we do is we tap into and find the file in the brain that handles, let's say, a trauma in your life or a physical injury or concussion. And then we find the other side of it through sensation. Where's your body in pain all the time? Or what's that very, very familiar feeling when you think about that problem in your life? So that will run a very deep rut in your nervous system, like the ruts in Malta. Have you ever seen the images of that where the ruts are like 2 feet deep and they go off into the ocean? That's what happens in our body. Our nervous system will run this pattern again and again and again till it's a deep rut. So what we discovered is that if you can change one end of that, you can collapse the pattern, and you can also find another part of the brain that's way more resourceful, that can think of it in a brand new way, that can change the perspective entirely to take over the job of that neural pattern. So the electrical, chemical, and hormonal signals are now changed to a much more resourceful state. And then the person sees life completely differently. Their body moves differently. Sometimes their digestion is changed. Their eyesight is often changed. Their gait can be changed. The way their shoulders move. It's literally all connected. So that was a long way to answer what's brain remapping, but it's how we now see it today.
So I'm curious, because I know that we've had quite a few guests talk about trauma, and not everyone's always aware of trauma, but does carry the pain of that trauma within the body. So what would be some signs or signals that we need to shift this alignment or this pattern that is reoccurring in our body? What are the things that we are to look for, Liz?
So it's all sorts of different things. It can be that there's a person in your life that you just cannot get along with. You need to, but you can't, right? And you don't know why, but they drive you nuts. That could be one signal that your system is reacting and reacting to an external stimulus, but your logical mind is like, I don't know why, I just can't get it together around this person. Another could be like a chronic pain. So I met somebody at the event I was sharing with you at the International Mandela event, Effect Conference, who just had this pain in their toe. They could not get rid of the pain in their toe. Been to a podiatrist. There's nothing wrong with the toe, but they have pain in the toe. It turns out that pain is related to an accident that happened to them around 10 years old. It was on a school grounds, playgrounds. Those things are dangerous. They had an injury, fallen that day. But before that, someone had also really hurt their feelings. And the two things sealed themselves together. A physical injury and an emotional injury are often really related in the system. They link themselves together. But she didn't know it until we had her put her attention on the toe and then actually looked for the place in her vision, her brain that reacted as well. And when we found it, the memory was like, oh, I fell. I hurt myself at 10 and then so-and-so hurt my feelings. Instantly, when the body saw the pattern was unresourceful, like it didn't really need to send energy to her toe because it was a non-issue, the pain vanished. So it can be little things, but it could also be big health issues as well, the obvious ones.
So how do you actually find, so what you were saying, like this lady had the pain in her toe, what was the technique, or what is the process for you to tap into that memory?
So what we do is we would have her focus our attention on the pain, fully on the pain. Put yourself in there because that's the neural pattern. We're like brain, body, right there. There's the problem. It's that toe. And then what we do is we do a process that we call sorting. And we actually will have the eyes track, a lot of times in an oval pattern around the head, to look for a place that the eyes do not want to go. They don't want to look there. Why? Because the body wants to avoid the problem. So the problem and the solution can be in the same place. Once you find a place where it's like, whoa, that really hurts, and the eyes have to stretch there, or I'm sorry, but I just lost vision in that spot. Like we use a ball to kind of lead the eyes. I lost track of the ball. I can't see it. Or the eyes start to blink or water or just in pain. And when you find that spot with the attention on the toe, the neural pattern shows itself. It completely reveals what's there. In fact, we'll say, what's here? And the memory just starts to play out. The whole pattern plays itself out. And the person realizes the time and place when that pattern began. And oftentimes when the body sees it, it collapses automatically. It just changes. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it takes some coaxing, but a lot of times it does.
So from my understanding, it's almost like a scanning of the, and is there a difference between scanning the left side or the right side of the brain?
No, we scan it all. And we also use a grid in front of the brain because all eye positions connect to places in the brain. So yeah, it's just a kind of scan, like you said, to see what is just not functioning.
And then you look at the resistance. So obviously once you hit a spot where there's a level of resistance, that's exactly where that spot is. And obviously once you go, so you're looking for the resistance, and then once you find the resistance, you go into there, and that's where once you go into it, it sounds like once you see, it's hard to unsee. It opens up Pandora's box.
Yeah. Yeah. And so often it's the weirdest thing. It's not the thing you would imagine at all. Life's biggest issue. A lot of times people will see that it wasn't an issue at all, or it didn't happen that way. Or they're like, gosh, that makes no sense, right? And then the whole thing just unwinds. But until that point, the person really, really believes that this is their biggest issue. It's the thing they cannot get over in life. It's the thing that's holding them back. And what's so interesting is it's a very familiar sensation, very familiar. And oftentimes you sort of believe you're built on it. It is you. And then instantly, once the connection is made, once the body realizes it's made a series of weird programming errors, it'll sort it right out. We call it an autocorrection. And the person sees reality for what it actually is. And the sensation goes to neutral, meaning I just don't feel that way anymore. And here's what's really, really interesting. When this started to happen, Bill and I were like, what in the world is this? So a person would come in, a 10 out of a 10 problem. This is my issue. I have this pain or I have that problem. And at the end, we'll backtrack a bit like, okay, so when you came in, it was the biggest problem with your mother and, it was a 10 out of a 10. And they'll look at us and say, oh, I didn't have that problem. I don't know what you mean. So we'll show them what we've written down. Or a lot of times they'll say, oh, that is so interesting. What did you come in for today? And they'll stare at me for a few seconds and then they start to laugh when they remember. But it's so completely collapsed in the system. And this is the interesting thing. Sensation runs our thoughts, not the other way around. When the sensation is gone, the brain just doesn't care about it anymore. It's a non-issue, and it'll relegate it to somewhere in the brain that we just don't have a concern about it, and we have no memory of it anymore. You remember that it happened, but it feels like it really didn't happen to you, or it certainly wasn't very important. Super fascinating.
It is. It sounds interesting. So obviously, let's say if that, this accident happened in my toe and, when I was in, 10 or 12, obviously at that time it was a significant emotional event that took place because that was really painful, but at the same time, somebody wasn't very nice to me. So the two
Yeah.
merged together, and obviously that I've carried that this whole time. And so what I'm understanding is once the brain sees it for what it is, and once you look at it with your newfound eyes, because sometimes you look back and go, oh, yeah, obviously, I always talk about even when I look at the way that I was bullied at school, those kids did the best they could with the information. It's not that they were really being harmful towards me. And so when you see that there's more compassionate towards them, that this sense of hanging on to being a victim, it does naturally collapse. But what you were saying at the start, there are sometimes you need to remap those patterns so that they, because obviously the ones that you need to remap do not collapse naturally. So I'd love to learn more about that, because when you were saying about someone triggering you, we could all relate to that. Where we're going, why am I getting triggered by this person? A lot of the times I'm like, oh, that's obviously something I need to work within myself, or a wound that I need to heal, or always bring it back to myself. But you're saying there's a technique we can use to remap that so we stop getting these triggers. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So if we think about it this way, the nervous system really takes in all the information, everything. The nervous system will feel into this room that I'm in and decide if it's hot or cold. What do I need to do with my temperature? It reaches out to people around us, and we sort of feel each other's field. We really do. We have to. It's the way the body decides, do I get close to that or don't I? Right? So it takes in all the information. And then the nervous system itself, between the brain and the body, decide how to react. So it handles all of our action and reaction, right? So when we need to do a remap, we see how the body's actually handling that information. Where is the brain processing that? So I'll tell you a quick story. I have this guy who was a designer, a website designer, a graphic designer. And he said, Liz, my problem is that I'm a graphic designer, but I do really great if they give me very, very explicit instructions. If they tell me that I have to get creative, he said, I literally go into a panic meltdown. I have to hide for days. I just can't do it. As he's telling me this story, he can only look to, now right and left don't work for me, so let me remember, he could only look to the right, right? The whole story he's telling me, and his eyes are to the right the whole time, up and down, scanning up and down, telling me this story of panicking, right? So eyes to the right mean he's in his left brain. He's just utilizing the left brain. And so it's easy for me. I can see, wait a minute, his left brain is not his creative brain. He's just using the linear and stress side of his brain. So I simply said, his name is Andre. I said, Andre, would you just simply move your eyes to the left for me? Move your eyes to the left and just tell me again about this problem that you're having. And it was a big problem because it was affecting his income. It was affecting his relationships. So he moved his eyes all the way left. And it was that sound, beep, flatline, the hospital beep. I said, okay, go ahead. Whenever you're ready, tell me about this problem you're having with, not being able to be creative. And he couldn't even talk. He said, I can't find it. I can't even find any piece of what you're asking me. So this is a classic remap. So we simply moved everything over to the left side, reconnecting his creative brain with this process to the point where he could tell the story fully on the left. But then what we did is we harmonized both sides so that his brain could now communicate left and right to get his linear brain, which is so smart, and his creative brain, which is so creative, talking to each other all the time. I think this is what happens. We get stuck in one hemisphere. We get stuck in where our brain just cannot communicate fully. And when that happens, in his case, the feeling around it changed completely. The pattern changed completely. Later that day, he had a client who wanted him to get creative, and he had a great time with it. So when I followed up with him and asked him about 7 days later about how it was going, he also didn't remember that he ever had the problem. So he was like, no, I've always been really creative. Good. Okay.
That's amazing. So obviously, for our audience, I'd love to hear the difference between the left. Obviously, this is the logic, the data, the analytical side of the brain, compared to the right, which is a lot more to do with emotions and creativity and all those beautiful things. So basically what you did is build a bridge between the two so that there was a connection.
Yes.
He could actually utilize either left or the right.
Yeah. Yeah. Mainly what happens is, and there's a lot of reasons for it. A big one is concussion. Another one is life trauma. It also could be that your neck is out. That the brain, for some reason, just starts to move all of its attention, its processing power into one hemisphere. So a lot of what we do is harmonizing the left and right hemisphere and open up the areas of the brain that are not functioning, that have been kind of walled off from the rest of the system, allowing the whole thing to flow easily. So the left brain, for most people, and it's not true for everyone, the left brain for most people handles your stress. It handles your linear side. It handles things like math and organization. And then the right brain often handles your creativity. It's the part of your brain that knows how to signal the body to get out of fight or flight, to calm. However, having only one side be your predominant side and not having access to the other, or not having the ability to move things back and forth fluidly, really, really limits a person's life. It limits their range of motion a lot. So for us, those of us who use CognoMovement, we do it daily for that purpose, to simply make sure that we have access to our whole brain in the most resourceful way. It also has an automatic function of down regulating the fight or flight response. When you harmonize both hemispheres of the brain, the fight or flight response naturally just collapses and you go into more of a neutral. The other thing it does is it gives you ideas and inspiration. Like, once you do this, your ideas are off the charts. You're inventing things, you're creating things, you're moving things around your house, you're painting masterpieces. So there's a lot of benefit and value, even beyond trauma and clearing concussions and things like that.
That is so fascinating. So CognoMovement. So obviously a lot of it's got based on, because from my understanding, a lot of it's based on your eyes as a way to map the two. So when somebody is speaking about an event or trauma or an experience, you're actually seeing which side of the brain's been activated as they speak. And the way that you bring the balance is for them to look on the opposite side, to start tapping into that and trying to verbalize whatever that is that they're experiencing. And is that how you harmonize? When you're talking about doing this daily, is that about switching the eyes from left to right that you do on a daily basis?
Yeah, we use a pattern and we use these funny little balls. I don't know if everybody's gonna be able to see us, but this is called a cogno ball. And it is a complex color and symbol, a geometric symbol and color, and then 3D and touch. So what we do with it in our most basic pattern is left and right, low to high. So the reason that we do this is we're pushing information back and forth across the corpus callosum, across the brain. And just the simple crossing the center line of the body, does a lot to help that, but it also does a lot to calm the nervous system. But we start in the kinesthetic body. The eyes in the down position. If you look down or you see someone looking down, you assume maybe they're sad, they're in their emotions, but it's the way we connect with our physical body. If you stub your toe, you know you did, but you have to look down at it. Even if it's inside a shoe, what are you going to see? You don't know, but you're connecting automatically with your physical body. That's how the brain does it. If we're in our emotions, we tend to be looking downward. So we start there. We start at that end of the nervous system when we move left and right up the body. When you get to about the mouth level, the eye position where it's more straightforward and left and right, you move into the logical mind, eyes and ears. What have I seen? What do I know? But it also moves into neutral. So if you see someone spacing off, they'll often be looking straight forward with their mouth hanging open, duh. But it's neutral. It's a neutral place that our brain knows how to go into in that space. And then above the eyebrows, we move into the ideas and inspiration part of the brain. And we know this because if you see a picture of somebody with their hands up and their eyes up, what do you think? If I do this, I'm in worship, right? If I do this, hands straight up and up like this, I win, right? This is how our brain works. So over time, and with injuries, people's eyes really don't move like that. We kind of tend to be in this straight forward neutral. And so when we move the body and the eyes in this pattern, we make a lot of connections. We turn down the fight or flight response. We turn on ideas and inspiration, and we start to open up the visual reference and the brain in a way that creates like a refresh.
I love that. I'm always thinking, I always say, you can trick your mind with your body. So try staying in a bad mood and skipping. Because you can't stay in a bad mood and skip. So that's why I think I love that you're talking about the body language as a way to activate or shift or, because your mind can't really tell the difference between what is real and what is not real. So you're actually playing with the movement to create this bridge between the left and the right. And so you do this daily?
Yeah, most of us do, like 5 minutes just to warm up. For me, it's about ideas and inspiration. For other people, it's maybe calming anxiety. For other people, it's for athletic performance. If you do this pattern before you take a run or do yoga, it's incredible how much more flexibility or speed or focus that a person has. So it's just one of those things. It's a natural system, but we just don't utilize it because, as you get older, you're just looking straight ahead at your work, at a book, at a computer, at a TV. Little kids, they're googly-eyed. Their eyes are all over the place, everywhere. And we just get more and more narrow. And with trauma and other injuries, you get more and more and more narrow even with that. So this basic movement just creates a lot of harmonization in the whole system, not just the brain.
And I'm also curious, what's the ball? What's the association with the balls and the different colors and the different, they all look like chakra.
Yeah, they are. They're actually a mandala, but really they're just complex geometric symbol. So if I'm just holding this and you're looking at it now, your left brain is very interested in the color and the symbol. It's like, oh, what is that? The right brain really likes this 3D, and if you're holding it, that kinesthetic part is activated. We also utilize this tool mainly as a way to keep focus, so people can have something to follow. We utilize it to see, what's the dominant eye, left eye or right eye. We utilize it for a whole lot of things. So the meaning is sort of less important than the action that it creates just in the brain. So these could be other kinds of geometric symbols, letters or numbers as well. But originally, so Bill designed this ball, but originally what he had in mind is he thought that really it was just that the chakra system was moving information. That was really early on, and he had these created way back then. But what we know now is the chakra system is the part of the body that has these heavy cross sections, like the nerves gather, in each of those chakra areas. It's where you have the most electricity emitted from your body, simply because you have the most nerves there. But truly what we've discovered is that patterns in the body move through the system everywhere. It could be your fingertips. It could be the tops of your ears. We use the ears a lot, actually. It could move from your big toe to your knee, to your left hip, to your right shoulder, and out the top of your head. So the pattern really can be anywhere. So now, really, it is just a tool that we use to keep focus and have the eyes follow.
So it's not color therapy. It's not like what colors stand out to what chakras associated to what you're experiencing.
No, not necessarily. We have a smaller ball that we use that have these big colors, and we do use these to see what color the brain can see. What we know is that when a brain is not functioning correctly, it also won't see color correctly, especially in the peripheral or non-focused vision. So this is the way we test for concussion. If I hold the ball 12 inches, out from your head, like over your shoulder, and I have your eyes focused forward and ask you what color the ball is, if you have a concussion or your brain is not working in that place, you will say, I don't see that ball at all, or there is no color, or the wrong color completely. So it's a way that we can tell how the brain is actually connected with itself. So connected with the rest of the nervous system, connected to the opposite hemisphere. So we use them for all kinds of things. The other thing is when a person is in session with us, they're always utilizing one of these. So we have the kinesthetic stimulus as well with touching the ball. So we use it for all kinds of things.
Geez, I wouldn't want to try that out, because I know last time I went to my optometrist, they were saying that my peripheral vision is deteriorating. So then what do you do? So you identified somebody's got, concussion. What do you do now? How do you use that same technique to brain map across to the other side once you're identifying which side?
There's actually a lot of things that we do. The first thing that we do is we do what's called a reconnecting set, and that's using this color and the non-focused vision. And we reconnect because what we know is that the brain is really good at making stuff up. It doesn't utilize truly your non-focused vision as much as you think it does. It'll make things up about what's over here on the left and what's over here on the right because it saves energy. Right? I don't have to be concerned about that necessarily. So I'm just going to put all my attention here. But what happens then is that when it isn't functioning at all, when you have a brain injury that's preventing, you from actually seeing, you don't know because it's constantly making stuff up. So that's why we do that first. We check to see, is that part of the brain functioning? And we reconnect. We reconnect with proprioception and depth perception as well. We even reconnect the hearing in that area because as it turns out, there's even a part of the eyes that takes in sound. But sound is also another way that the nervous system takes in information. So it's a little bit complex, that part of it. But throughout the session, we're always using that left and right pattern intermittently to do what we call mapping it in, letting the whole system take a look at a new preset or collapsing an old preset as well. So we're constantly shifting hemispheres. And I think our game really is how much of the brain can we get to come online? And how much of the old pattern that's not working can we get the whole system to autocorrect? So that's it. It's our work actually has hundreds of little tiny tools that a practitioner uses to put together to assist the system in changing itself, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It sounds quite complex because I'm seeing that even from a hearing perspective, how do you do that? Because I know lots of people, especially in elderly ages, I was saying this yesterday, how many more people are we seeing with hearing aids these days?
Mm. Yeah.
which is
So
amazing.
many, so many. You know, it's so fascinating. This work is so fascinating. I'm like, Bill and I, it's the great love of our lives outside of our families, because it just reveals itself all the time. And the sound was something that Bill played with one day in his office. And there was a part of the vision that just would not come online for a person in a specific area. And it'll mean, that's probably an area that was damaged a long time ago, and the brain just routed around it. So he used a little bell. I think he had like a little bell in his office to see if that was something that could activate the area. And the truth is, a lot of it is just experimentation. And when the sound became available to the system, so did the sight. And so what we learned from that also is that there's a certain part of your depth perception. Where does your body think it is in space, proprioception? And then where can your body actually reach for in space? Is the thing that you're reaching for actually in the space that you think it is? And so the bell, ringing the bell and not having someone not look, but then try to touch where they think it is in space, connects even a deeper part of that depth perception, proprioception thing. And why does this matter even at all? It matters immensely because if you've had a concussion or a trauma that acts like a concussion, those are the kind of people that are always running into things, tripping or falling, curbing the tires on their car because their body doesn't actually know where they are in space. This part of the brain nervous system isn't functioning. So that's why we call it reconnecting, is we reconnect all of those things. But here's the most interesting thing. When a person has had a brain injury or a major trauma, you find that right after that, their life sort of falls apart, their relationship falls apart, they lose all their money, they become homeless, they end up with multiple injuries again and again and again. And so what we found is that when we do this reconnection and now your peripheral vision is working, your left and right hemisphere are talking again, your eyesight actually gets a little better, your hearing gets a little better, your movement is better, all of a sudden the person's life comes back online. They spontaneously repair relationships. All of a sudden they figure out how to work their money out. All of a sudden health issues that they've had for a long time just simply vanish. It's like they weren't ever there. So it sounds like a miracle, and that's sort of what it looks like. But the truth is, it's just that you have a system that's running in a really unresourceful way. It's like your computer that has a program in it that is either way too big for the computer or has a virus. When you take it off the computer, what happens? Everything just starts working well again. So I think the bottom line is that everything in your system is connected to everything else in your life. So back to that big toe. That big toe may hurt, but that also may be connected to the reason you can't get a job or keep friends or find a relationship. Once that pattern is kind of sussed out and then shifted, the whole life tends to shift. So I think that's the most interesting part.
It is, absolutely. And I'm sure there's a lot of our audience here either viewing or listening to this go, how do we do it? Because does the individual have to be physically in your presence, or do you do that online? And is it a matter of, because you said there was 100 different techniques, how do you know which is the best technique using depending on what's been presented? Because you don't always have to. I know for me, sometimes and I'm sure you're across timeline therapy, where you can go back in time in your timeline and remember the first significant emotional event that you could connect to. You don't have to know what it is. You don't need to go into it. But the fact that you remember maybe just the pain from it. Is that similar with what you do? It's not, you don't always have to remember who did it, what the person said. It might just be an experience that you connect to, or maybe an age. Is that correct?
Yeah, most people have no idea. They're shocked. So I'll tell you a little story that will highlight this. One of our practitioners, she said her mom had never been there for her. Her mom wasn't really a part of her life. And it was a big issue for her. She'd been kind of raised by another family member. And her 100% truth was, my mom was not there for me. My mom was never there for me. She wasn't there. And so we were, it was in a practitioner training. We started to work through the files of her brain, work through the story. And in this case, we were using a pattern that just goes kind of around the head, stopping in like, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock position, with the eyes sort of stretched, far left and far right. It's kind of a slow-ish process. And, just kind of sorting through the files of the brain. And when we got around all the way around, all the way around the clock back to the top, she gasped and said, "Oh my God, I just saw that my mom was literally at every event." Now, she wasn't available emotionally, but my mom showed up and she said, "If you had asked me 5 minutes ago if my mom was at these events, I would have said 100% not, she was not. And I would call you a liar if you said she was." And she said, I just saw it. I saw her in the audience. I saw the places. The truth is, our brain records everything. Our nervous system records everything, but we just don't always have access to the file. So this process allowed her access to the files. Now, just moving her eyes would not have done that. She was also focusing on that sensation, such a familiar sensation of abandonment. So her body had a place where it would get active when she would think about her mom abandoning her. And focusing on that feeling and then looking for the place in the brain made the connection. And she realized, oh my God, she was there the whole time. She showed up for me in a way that I didn't think she could. So we see that constantly. You don't have to know. Your body knows though, and it'll show you what really happened. And this is interesting. I would say about 75% of the time, what you think happened in the biggest trauma in your life did not. It didn't. It's a culmination of your life, remembering it, and taking in whatever's in the environment every time you remember it. You take on a bit of someone else's story. You take on a bit of how you're feeling when you remember it. If it's one of those things you've talked about a lot with a therapist, that gets changed and distorted as you talk about it. It grows and shrinks, and it's not at all what you think it is. So when you realize what it really is, combined with the stimulus, the support for your system to create change, it all shifts very, very quickly. And like I said, life changes dramatically for most people when they realize that their biggest issue probably wasn't at all what they thought it was.
That's true, isn't it? Because when anything happens, it's really the meaning we give it. And over time, the stories do change. And I always say, good, I remember you telling that story, but I'm sure it was different about 5 years ago. It seems to be getting bigger and bigger over time.
Yeah, our memories are really corrupt files. They're very not reliable at all. And, they say an eyewitness is like the best witness, but it's actually the worst witness because it depends on what your neural state was when you took in the information. If you're in shock when you take in information, who knows what the files are going to look like around that, right? And then as the body comes out of shock, it changes its opinion. And then for some people, you never really come completely out of shock after a big event. And so that sculpts the way you perceive what happened to you.
So that is really, really fascinating. So I think also, using CognoMovement, from my understanding, because it seems to be, there's a lot of, like, you hear a lot of people having stress, anxiety, depression.
Yeah.
Is this one of those things that helps, or even limiting beliefs? Is this something that helps eradicate or remove these kind of things that are so deeply ingrained into us?
It really, really does. It changes them in the moment, instantly, but it also changes who you are over time. So if you're a person whose system was raised on a fight or flight, a trauma, an injury, you will be maybe a person who tends towards anxiety and fear. But once that initial pattern is changed and collapsed, it collapses all the stories that are built on top of it as well. So once that's gone, and once you know how to manage the sensation is the key. That's the way into the pattern. You can use this to rewrite that again and again, so that the body never records it the way it did before, based on a pattern of fight or flight. So it changes really who you are. And I have to say, personally, for me, this is the most exciting thing, because who I'll be next week, if I do this for 7 days, is completely different than who I am today. Because in 7 days of making sure my brain is harmonized and my nervous system is, in a neutral, nice state, I make different decisions. I learn things differently. I grow in a way, and I'm not basing everything on an old story or an old neural pattern. So I become more and more of who I really am on a daily basis. So for me personally, that's super exciting. But I want to answer something that you asked earlier. Like I said, we have 100 tools. So our practitioners are very well trained in utilizing these little tools and knowing how to apply them to help their client create the greatest change. In person is the most amazing, but online it works. It's very, very effective. We do it worldwide online. But people can learn to do the basic things for themselves very easily. They don't have to know hundreds of tools. That's kind of the ninja kit, right? But learning how to very simply address how you're feeling in the moment can help people change dramatically their relationships with themselves and with everything else. It can help them change, patterns of anxiety and depression, absolutely, because those are based in old neural patterns. If we're feeling it and we feel it completely, and we do this pattern, the body will be like, oh, I guess I'm wasting energy here. I don't really need that. And you shift out of that and into something much, much more resourceful, meaning the brain and the body are sending signals to each other that can be utilized for healing, right? They can be utilized for brain power and ideas. They can be utilized for love and respect and joy, because a body in fight or flight does none of that. Its one job is to get out of the way of the tiger that's on your butt, right? So what our body does is it pulls all the energy to muscles to run, heart to go, right? Adrenaline. And you just go into that, primitive part of the brain that it says, okay, what decisions do I have to make to get out of the way of the thing that's going to kill me? But in our day and age, the thing that's going to kill you is anxiety over a bill, right? Or a problem with a relationship, or my clothes don't fit right, So we never actually come out of that fight or flight, and our bodies don't heal, and we don't think well, and we drop into depression, right? So simply getting the body out of fight or flight, making the hemispheres talk to each other, moving into the brain pattern, eyes up position of ideas and inspiration, even for 30 seconds a day, changes the way that the system functions. And that grows on itself as well. So you function better and better day after day.
I love that. So there's obviously a program that we can do for ourselves as a way to heal ourselves. We don't necessarily have to find a practitioner to actually go through it. So from what you're saying, Liz, is my understanding is it's an experience or a sensation or feeling most of the time that you connect with, that then you tap into, and then just do this exercise. Like you said, if we go back to what you said at the start, like I get triggered by this one person all the time.
Yeah.
And you don't even know why, because they're amazing.
Yeah.
So it could be just a sensation and a trigger and experience. So it's because you were saying it's the feeling first, and then you find where it's sitting, or where's the resistance in the brain.
Yeah. You find the match. Where do my eyes not want to move? Where, when I move them there, it hurts, or I go half blind, or I see double. And often when you find that place in the visual reference, the feeling gets bigger. So here's an example of that. That's funny and a little sad. this mom came in and she was homeschooling her kids. So she said, everything was great with her daughter, but with her son, she just wanted to murder him every time they did homeschooling. Like he was on her last nerve. Well, in working with her, I discovered that to her left and right about the liver level. So if your head was straight forward and you moved your eyes down to, your liver level on that side, that was where her body would instantly go into anger. Instantly. We all have one, by the way. We also have one that puts us instantly in love and bliss as well. But that was her spot. And 3 guesses where her child was sitting when she homeschooled him. Right there. So even in her non-focused vision, he was right in the place that triggered her system to go into anger, right? So here's what we did. We moved him to straight across from her or somewhere on the opposite side. And she stopped feeling that way, period. Like she just stopped. It was the easiest thing ever. So sometimes it's that there's a person who is sitting in a place that either triggers an old memory for you and you don't even realize it. It's based in emotion, like you're angry or sad or fearful. And it's just that they're sitting in that place that your body references that particular emotional pattern. So the first thing a person could do is figure that out. Are they always to my left? Are they always to my right? And simply move your body to a different place, a different eye position, and see if that changes it. And that's a really big clue. Some of the other things are sometimes a person has a certain smell that reminds us of something else. It's not logical. It's not even conscious. And that's the issue. So in that case, we can remap the body around that olfactory stimulus, right? Sometimes it's simply just that they do something that reminds you of yourself that you really dislike. Like maybe you're worried about being a little bit lazy and it's your kid that is displaying a little bit lazy, It just turns on your fight or flight response. That's it. So what we do is we find what is the feeling in the body that happens. And then we find the correlating visual reference and we just remap it. We change it. We get the body to not respond that way anymore. Just create a different automation. So here's something so interesting though. What we find is that when a person does the work on themselves, the other person weirdly automatically changes. So I had a woman whose mother was a military woman her whole life, 30 years military, to this very rigid way of thinking about things, like buck up and get over it, right? Well, that can affect your children. So this client was like, my mom's just hard and rigid and she doesn't understand how the things she did, the men she married, how they affected me. So we did a session around that. Actually, the session was about her husband. The mom sort of came into it, somewhere in the middle. When she got home from the session, her mom, who lived 3,000 miles away, was calling her on the landline. And the mom says, "Hey, I was just thinking about you. And I just realized that some of the things I did in your life affected you, my choices. And I want you to know I'm sorry." So there's this quantum relationship effect. We hold people in our neural patterns. We hold them through our perspective for who we think they are. The minute we let them go in our own body, they change in the most miraculous ways. It's one of those spooky actions at a distance thing, but we've seen it again and again that during a session or an event, when a person's working on a problem with another person, inevitably they will get a text from that person or a voicemail or a phone call saying, "Hey, I just realized," or "Hey, I love you so much and let's spend time," or whatever. So it's a really interesting thing how connected we are via our nervous systems.
Absolutely. I think that from a quantum physics point of view, there is no time and space between one another. I think it's always in the present moment, in a now moment. And when you make those changes within, they have this on-flow effect in your environment and people around you. So I am conscious of your time, but I just have one last question. So with the remapping, you don't have to remap something like, so for example, in coaching, we talk about present state and future state. So in the present state, there might be things that are not, going too well in an area of your life. And then what you get the client to do is you can get them to future pace. What would be that ideal situation, career, relationship, whatever that may be. And we get them to activate all their senses as much as possible for them to experience what it would feel like, what would it sound like, what would it look like. So you don't, with your technique, with CognoMovement, it's not that you need to create a new environment or a new experience for them to shift it across. It's just a matter of understanding what it was, just moving into a different part of your body, and it naturally collapses. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. And even the understanding fully what it was isn't necessary. What's necessary is for the person to just feel the way they do about it. And then we use that to change the neural pattern. What's so interesting about future pacing, because I'm a master NLP practitioner, so future pacing is a big part of that. What we found that's so interesting is if I were to ask you to future pace something in your current neurological state, that's going to look one way because it's based on the current limitation that the neurology feels is possible. It's based on a past trauma. It's based on past information and corrupt files, like we talked about, right? So once the system is at neutral, or the neural pattern is changed, or you just don't feel that way anymore, is the easy way to say it. The future pacing is so different, and manifesting is so different. I don't know if this has happened to you, but have you ever manifested something that when you got it, you're like, I don't want this. I don't like it, right? Well, that's because you manifested it in a state of fight or flight, or, Bill likes to call it thwarted wanting, right? I want it, but it's probably because I don't feel good enough about myself now, or I only think this limitation is possible, not the real thing. So when you manifest with a really clear nervous system, what you manifest is something completely different and something you could never even imagine would happen because you're imagining with, not a restricted system. So that's kind of fascinating as well.
Yeah, no, I know it's like that. I'm trying to think of the quote. It's hard to remove the problem from the mind, considering it's the mind that created the problem in the first place, or something like that. I'm not doing it justice, but yes, it's very similar. So I love the fact that you brought that up. Okay, so it is that time of, because I'm conscious of your time, where we go into our 3 shiny golden nuggets. So Liz, what would be those 3 shiny golden nuggets that you would like to leave for our audience today?
Well, the first one is how to find ideas and inspiration. So this is a really easy one that most of us as adults never do. So if you were to just let your head be straight and level, meaning so your chin's not way up or down, it's just level, and you simply roll your eyes up like you want to look at your own eyebrows, take a big deep breath, belly breath, and then let your breath out through the mouth and actively relax the body. Like notice where the tension is and kind of let it go like and you'll notice that your eyes will move up farther in your head. And if your eyes are sore, you know that this is a particularly special place for you to work. But once your eyes are in the up position, simply tick-tocking them left and right, like maybe using the ceiling as a reference, and super deep breathing. So you're giving a lot of oxygen to your eyeballs and to your brain, and being super aware to actively relax your body with the breath. And you'll notice that pretty soon your eyes are going farther and farther up. There's less strain. And in 2 or 3 minutes, all of a sudden, this ideas and inspiration part of your own system that always existed just opens up. So anybody can do it. If you're working, if you're, writing a book, if you're, have kids in school, if you just want to like lift your mood, that eyes up position will do it. The second one is how to use your spine instantly to get out of fight or flight. And this is an interesting one. If you simply collapse your spine a little bit, like move your pelvis and your head closer together, so like fetal position, On a big deep breath in, if you kind of drop your head down and elongate your spine, and then as you breathe out, just sort of let your spine and your head flex back open again, all the way to a really open position where your head's kind of back and your shoulders are back. Doing this can immediately stop a panic attack or get someone out of fight or flight. So it has a lot of functions. It gives oxygen to the brain. It also isn't something you would normally do. So, you want to get away from the lion. You don't want to necessarily deep breathe and stretch your spine. So it immediately signals to the body, we're going to go into relaxation. So even 30 seconds of that, and it's one of those things you can do super covertly. If you're in a meeting, big stretch and kind of, just stretching and then kind of curl forward, letting your head rest, like you're stretching your back a little bit. Always layered on with deep breathing, because deep breathing immediately signals the body to get out of fight or flight. It is a state change. It's not a permanent change. But if you're a person who has anxiety or fear, and every time you feel it, you do this, it starts to change it over time. So it's a really good one. If you were to add on to that, when your head's hanging down, when you're stretched down and kind of curling your spine and shoulders forward, you roll your eyes up at the same time, that has even a deeper effect. So this is where those 100 little tools, if you know how to put them together, you can create miraculous change in minutes. But, anytime you can roll your eyes up in your head, you access that part of the brain that knows, hey, we're going to lift mood. We're going to feel better, right? And the third one is, so our first book, it's just an ebook. It's free. Anybody can download it at CognoMovement.com. It's called Suffering is Optional. So if you can begin to recognize when you're suffering. So you're talking about like a person who drives you nuts. That's a form of suffering. You know it because your body does a thing, right? Your body does a thing. It feels a certain way. It constricts maybe in the gut or in the throat, or you actually get a pain in your neck, right? This is a signal your body has just moved into a suffering mode, hurting, uncomfortable, a sensation that feels negative. The minute you can recognize it and be like, I see you, body. I see what you're doing. That'll start to unwind the pattern, because you're like, oh, I just remember what Liz said. They just came into my view. My body just did a thing. And now I'm thinking these thoughts. Okay, body, I see what you're doing. Got you. I'm going to step away for just a second. I'm going to stretch a bit. I'm going to roll my eyes a bit. And then I'm going to come back to the situation with a fresh neural pattern. The more that you can learn to do this, to recognize when you go into suffering mode, understand that it's not necessarily the truth. It's just what your body's doing in the moment. It's just an automation that your body got into. Over time, that changes completely. And the suffering gets shorter and shorter and shorter until sometimes it gets kind of funny. You're like, okay, nope, not doing that, right? Let me go over here in the bathroom for a second and run my pattern left, right, low to high, 3 or 4 times, deep breathe, come out, and everything's changed. So problems that may have lasted 2, 3, 4 days or weeks are just boiled down to a few seconds, a change in physical pattern, a change in eye pattern, a change in your breathing, and you avoid suffering that could have lasted maybe even a lifetime. So those are my 3 super, super simple things. And they're things all of us who know these tricks use every minute of every day to create more and more resourceful lives, the lives that we really want. And the experience of a life through who we really are, not through our injuries and traumas.
I love that. That were 3 simple ones. And I love the fact that, because obviously over time, if you keep doing it, you're training your body to snap out and break out of those patterns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they don't build on top of each other. If we all understood that every experience we have builds on top of every other experience, and if we know that some of those experiences are actually not true, not what we think they are, unnecessary, then we realize that our lives don't have to be based on things that are not helping us, that they don't serve us, that are not real. And so the more we do it, the more we can avoid that. We can avoid what we call stacks of neurological issues and trauma, stacks of emotional issues and trauma, and stacks of physical issues and trauma as well.
Wow, I love this. I absolutely love it. Look, Liz, I would love to find out where you hang out the most. We'll have everything in the show notes, but where do you hang out from the most?
You mean in social media?
Yeah, sometimes is it YouTube, Instagram?
Well, okay, so on YouTube, CognoMovement is the place. That's what the channel is called. And we have just a massive amount of information there. And we have a radio show that's there. We do sessions there all the time and information. So if you want to like digest everything about that, about CognoMovement, that's your place. On Facebook and YouTube, we interact and we answer all kinds of questions. So those are places as well. We don't personally hang out on Instagram, mainly because Bill and I don't really know how to use it, but our assistants do, and they'll get in there and answer questions and they'll send them right over to us. But if somebody has a really burning question or wants to know more about all of this and where to find it, you go to info@cognomovement.com. That's the fastest way to get information. And there's also a chat feature on our website as well. We kind of make it so that anywhere people find us, they can actually interact with us as well.
Love it. Love it. I can't thank you enough, Liz, for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing your wealth of wisdom, your time, and your energy with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. And Bill just wanted to say thank you so much for the opportunity as well. And he's so sorry that he missed you all and hopes to connect with you sometime soon in the future.
And we're all thinking about him and sending him lots of love and lots of healing.
Yeah. Thank you.